How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, great topic coming our way. Why am I constantly being undermined as a supervisor? Guys, I know this is going to get hit home because I know there probably are some supervisors right now that are probably being second guessed by the next level up. And we're going to discuss some reasons why we feel that could occur. This video is based on a concern that was sent my way. And I think it's something that me and Russ are going to have fun attacking. By the way, we have no idea where we're going to go with this. We just got the message now, and I said, Russ, let's do a live. Let's discuss it. So we are not prepared at all, but that's the good thing. By the way, the show sponsored today by two entities, American Military University. Guys, if you're looking for a higher level of education, guys, please check out American Military University. It's a great online school, very supportive of us in correction, supportive of Tier Talk. Please, guys, if you get a chance, check it out. It would be great to have people with experience in those classrooms teaching in good school, American Military University, guys. They'll get you there. And we also have Guardian RFID, from inmate tracking to cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence. Guardian RFID, digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. Plus, me and Russ also put videos on Guardian RFID. So if you guys get a chance, there's some good content on there as well. And my book, Inmate Manipulation, is on the market. It is available on Amazon, and there'll be a link to that in the description. And Russ, Keepers of Chaos, Facebook, what's going on? Russ has like 20 million profiles on Facebook, so be careful when you go to friend him, because it may not be him. You know, it could be. How many times has your account been hacked on Facebook or just banned?
It's more a matter of how many times has it been suspended. But, you know, I say things that upset people. You know, what can I say? So anyway, Anthony, it's great to be here. It's great to be in on this show. And Keepers of Chaos is going gangbusters, as it always is. We're creeping right toward that 5,000 mark. As soon as we do that, going to do a little something special for the channel. I think I'm going to do a quick little video just for my keepers. And probably on top of that, maybe squeeze in a little bit of a name change there on Keepers of Chaos. Keep the Keepers. Got something else special that I'm going to launch when that happens. And as far as you talking about preparing for a show, when have we ever done that?
Never. All right. So the topic is, why am I constantly being undermined as a supervisor? Now, obviously, I don't think we've ever touched on this before. We have talked about inmates circumventing authority, but that's usually really focused on the front line and inmates trying to manipulate to the highest level. But, you know, this is a good topic because as a supervisor, obviously our authority could be circumvented. And again, it could be circumvented by the next higher level. So maybe a sergeant who's being circumvented by the lieutenant maybe by a major or a captain, and administration is circumventing everyone. Worst comes to worst. But Russ, before we get into the topic, do you relate to this topic? Is this something that you believe? Has this ever happened to you?
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things. The human experience being what it is, this can crop up in a lot of different situations. It can crop up in a lot of different professions. And, you know, sometimes people are wanting to get what they can get for themselves all in that moment or the next moment beyond. And they're not about leadership. They're about direction. Right. And so what they do is instead of trying to lead you so that you lead the people below you and so forth, they try and cut you off at the knees, and they try and put you in a position where you have less authority over the people that you're supposed to have authority over than you should. And they try and usurp that authority, and they short circuit that chain of command.
Yeah. And guys, supervisors do need, I mean, obviously frontline as well, but supervisors need to be empowered. They need to know where their levels of responsibilities are, because obviously they have to make decisions. We need our supervisors to make decisions. So the last thing we want to do is do anything that questions their ability to make a decision. And in some cases, circumventing a supervisor's authority could make a supervisor hesitant. And the last thing you want to do is make the supervisor hesitant, because then what's going to happen is that's going to trickle down. You know, if the sergeant's hesitant, the officers are going to be hesitant. And plus, If the sergeant's hesitant because his power keeps on getting usurped, if you will, right? That's a good word, right? I mean, Russ, you would agree, right?
Yes.
The problem is that not only does the front line become hesitant or the level below, they start having less confidence in that supervisor. And it's not the supervisor's fault. It's just they're being second guessed or questioned. So obviously we do need, just, you know, if you're watching this video, you need to do what you can, obviously, to empower your front line. Don't get me wrong, but you got to have your supervisors have to be empowered, and they need to have that their defined levels of responsibility so they know where their decision making can be, the discretion within that. But Russ, do you believe we need to have our supervisors empowered, and the last thing you want to do to a supervisor is circumvent their authority or undermine them?
Exactly. And the thing that you really have to keep in mind is that whatever level you're at, on the level below you, when you give someone a directive, give them the directive, but let them figure out how they're going to execute that, if they're capable. If they're not, then you do need to give them some more direction, some more instruction. But if you're giving them too much, all you're doing is undercutting them with micromanagement, right? So you have to think about that, but let them take the initiative, let them be the self-starters that they need to be, and put upon them what tactics they're going to employ. You supply the strategy, they supply the tactics.
Yeah, it's kind of what I did a video back in the day, back in the day. What the hell was that from? I did a video maybe about a year or two ago. No, probably about 2019, so 3 years ago, about management, and it was about being a translator. You know, so you have the strategic, the operations, and the tactical, and, you know, kind of like, especially when you're talking about that immediate frontline supervisor, it's a mixture of the operation side of things, you know, and the tactical. So again, you know, you have to make sure that they're empowered, because in my mind, they're kind of in a very good position to kind of understand how the plan needs to be laid out, but also how to translate that plan to the front line. So again, you know, having a supervisor at that level and empowering them is great, because then the front line, they have that connection. You know, again, you know, you want to be connected to that immediate supervisor. So that supervisor kind of knows how to speak that language because they know their people. Now, with that said, it's kind of sent our way where a person that we may know does have a problem where he feels as a supervisor, his higher up is constantly circumventing his decisions. Now, first off, let's kind of explain this first. So, Russ, as a supervisor, let's do it this way. Let's kind of stick to the immediate frontline supervisor. Let's think of a sergeant. What are some of the ways, let's say a lieutenant or a captain could circumvent a sergeant's authority?
Okay, so first let's just talk about a little bit of the reasons for this. The reasons may be that they do not necessarily have confidence in that person, but then it's up to them to train them. The reason just may be that they're one of those social animals, and I'm going to give you a really good example of this in just a second, where they are more about doing favors for the staff that they know, because, you know, they do certain things with the staff on the weekends, or they've got their little favorites, or they're trying to, you know, curry favor with, you know, someone who might be even of the opposite sex or that kind of thing. So it's usually a supervisor like that that doesn't really care about the chain of command and doesn't really care about, you know, making sure that that structure stays in place. So I had an incident once where I was the unit officer, and this particular, and he wasn't even my immediate supervisor. He was the lieutenant, and he just decided that he wanted me out of there in order to make room for someone that played on his softball team. And so these people, they tend to be very short-sighted. They tend to act within the range of the moment, and they tend to not really care about, you know, running a professional unit, a professional organization. So when they go beyond those bounds and they start, you know, tinkering around with the things that you've set up in order to just curry favor with specific people, changing assignments and tasks and things like that to make people happy, instead of letting you run the unit as you see fit in order to execute the functions that you need carried out, that's where the problem starts. And that's where you actually end up undermining that individual that's supposed to be in charge of this unit, of these people, and you put them in an untenable position, because then all those people on that side of him in the chain of command, instead of coming to him and getting direction and training, they circle back around and they come to you because they figured out that you're the final figurehead and what you say goes, and they're worried about losing their assignment, losing their position, losing their days off, whatever, because you've chose to indulge in a bunch of craziness and not make that supervisor run his unit.
Now, you know what's funny is the peers of the person that's being favored, you know, they're going to start isolating that individual because they're going to know that, hey, this person's always getting a hookup. And so to be honest with you, even as, like I say, the higher level, if you are watching out for someone and you're giving them the easier jobs and you're kind of circumventing the sergeant who would want to kind of rotate or, you know, be the one responsible for assigning that manpower, let me tell you something. The peers know what you're doing. The supervisor doesn't even have to mention nothing. The peers know it. And the funny thing is that does affect the morale of the team. So that lieutenant or just in general, that higher level supervisor who's affecting the frontline supervisor from being fair and the distribution of the work being done or whatever it is to try to keep the morale. Because don't forget too, guys, good frontline supervisors, they know where best to position their people. And they should be positioning their people, you know, next to where they can be the best, their gifted areas, whatever it is. I mean, not because it's laid up gigs, but it's because, you know what, guys, these are where I feel that you're the best for the team. Because again, we want to complement each other. But then if you notice that this other person's always getting the easy way out, the team members are going to realize that. And the problem is not only are you, you know, as that higher level supervisor, you know, messing with my manpower, messing with how I'm making the assignments, but you're also killing my team morale. Because trust and believe, they see it. And the funny thing is, they are going to expect me to do something with the lieutenant. You know, they may expect me, hey, listen, Gange, you know, I've been doing inventories all week, and this guy here does nothing. And then it turns out what winds up happening is that, you know, even if you go to mention it and that supervisor doesn't want to hear it, then you're stuck just listening to people complain in your ear until you become miserable and disenfranchised because you can't do nothing about it. And then what do you start doing? You start avoiding talking to your team because, you know, every time they come up, they're going to be talking about how this one guy or one female has it easier than everyone else. So it really starts to kill the positive morale because, again, just that I'm going to hook up this person. When the team gets noticed, the team notices it. They're going to vent to the frontline person, the frontline supervisor. The frontline supervisor is going to go to, let's say, the LT and say, hey, listen, I know you got this going on. Can you just get this person back in rotation? This is kind of unfair. It's being seen by the team. And that supervisor's like, nah, that's my boy. He fixes my car or whatever the hell they do. Or that's my girl. And maybe they're dating. I don't know. But nope, leave her where she's at. Now, my team expects more from me. I can't do it. I become disenfranchised, and now I don't want to talk to my team because every time they talk, they just, Gange, this person got this job again, you know. And as I said, the rumor mill always happens where, and I'll tell you this, if you're a supervisor that tends to do this type of shit, the front line knows why. They always know why, even though you may think you're doing it secretly, that I'm going to hook up this person and, you know, I'm going to give them this post. Frontline knows why, because one is they're always curious about the best positions. They're always curious about what they perceive is who's always getting these best positions, even though I always feel that's subjective. Most part, 9 times out of 10, anything's better than an inventory. So who's not getting the inventories? You know, who's always getting maybe the tower? You know, who's always getting the GA position where they get to travel more and not be stuck in a unit? Whatever it is, they know. And what they do is they start asking questions, and eventually they know why that person's being hooked up. And then you start getting this rumor mill happening too, where, you know, hey, I think they're dating. Or if you're a supervisor and let's say you're chasing after someone for a relationship or whatnot, let's just do it that way. Generally speaking, doesn't matter sex or not, just you're chasing after someone because there's an interest. And all of a sudden, you in a higher position try to use your influence to, make life easier for that officer, that employee. Trust and believe, guys, that's going to get challenged, and you're going to wind up losing your position of authority because that turns out to be an ethic violation. Russ, what's your thoughts? Am I right with that?
Yeah, that's perfectly spot on. When you're in there and you're given these positions of power over people, you're in a sergeant's position, you're in a lieutenant, captain, whatever it is. Why, foist things upon people that they don't need? Corrections is rough enough without having to, always watch out for the political aspects and the internal machinations of the weird little games that go on, the cliques that form. In California, we used to call them the cars, because there would always be a different car, cropping up with its own little clique of people in it here and there. And if you were in the right car, you managed to get the premium jobs and things like that. Instead, you know what? Leave that stuff alone. If you're a supervisor, lieutenant, sergeant, whatever it is, focus on being an actual size and weight sergeant. If you're a lieutenant, focus on being an actual size and weight lieutenant that does lieutenant-y things. If you're a sergeant, do sergeant-y things. And if you're an officer, take direction the best you can and try and make your sergeant successful. Hopefully your sergeant is trying to make his lieutenant successful. But all the gamesmanship and stuff, man, that's detrimental. And in the end, it will hurt you. It will decrease your security. It will decrease your safety. It will decrease your esprit de corps. The morale of the unit will plunge, and you'll have a bunch of disaffected people who already have reason enough to, feel, like they've been, shat upon.
Disenfranchised.
Yeah.
And so for me, if I was a supervisor and I felt that my power was being circumvented for, let's say, favoritism, because we did talk about other concerns. I know Russ briefly went over competence, but again, I still believe that I kind of agree with Russ. If you're a sergeant and let's say your lieutenant doesn't trust you to do the job, it is their position to train you and build you up to that level. And if you can't, they don't readjust your environment. That's not teaching you anything. They're going to have to make decisions, and you're not going to like those decisions for some reason. But I know in this case here, it's not about being competent. It's more about favoritism. So what I would do first, before I even mention, now mind you guys, a lot of things we may know because we know the history, but when it gets challenged, it doesn't appear that way on the surface. So we have to do what we can to make sure that when we challenge these concerns, that it's based on evidence that we can prove. So a lot of the times we may walk up on what we feel, and unfortunately, it may be very hard to translate into, I know you're doing this, but you got to have that evidence. So the first thing I would do is, an obvious thing here is if I'm assigning people, and every day I come to work and I assign my people, and then this lieutenant comes over and they're constantly moving that one person, there's a pattern of behavior from that lieutenant that I can kind of pick on. It's like, well, how come every time I assign, my people into these areas, you're always moving this one, or you're always moving this group, or why is this one always being moved in these group of people that you're always rearranging, or why is this person always put in this area that, maybe your area, why is this person always being moved into your area? Now, mind you, when I'm doing my stuff strategically, when I was a sergeant, I did my best to rotate the work and in regard to a consensus, I guess, of what people felt were easier gigs as opposed to what were harder gigs. And when there was a consensus, I'd be like, okay, I know where they're at now. Let me just rotate the work and just try to balance things out. And most of the time, the general assignment people, they would, never be in the same area a couple of days in a row. They would be always moving, except for there could be some GAs that their posts were just so emergent. There wasn't enough time there were specialized skills that they had. In one case where I worked, I had one GA that could navigate through hundreds of keys to get the key you want immediately, and very hard to train that right off the bat. So if they do have a specialized function, usually you're able to justify the consistency in that person being always assigned that one area. And again, we're talking about facilities that may not have bidded posts, but again, getting a little technical here, but general assignments like manpower, you can move that around, as assigned. They're not units where it's stable, So again, even if you do have a bid, even if you, let's say you're a bidded GA or a bidded manpower person, you may not be bidded to serve a certain area. It's just, hey, you can pull this person from the pool. And then what happens is supervisors may consistently use those people in the same areas. I get it, because they're gifted and you may want to. But with that said, we also know that when we do these things, we have to make sure that the team is good, because don't forget, we all want to grow too. So, having said that, I mean, even though we're constantly using this person, are we giving people opportunities to grow into that? So again, I may have had that GA that was great with keys, but I would want eventually to have someone else that can learn that. So when he's not there, I have a strong backup. Now, with that said, what I would do, and hope I said it made sense, because that was a lot there, but I would look at my schedule. If the person was constantly making those changes, I would ask very generically, hey, what's going on? Is there a problem with how I'm doing what I'm doing? And I would probably try to ask every possible question I can ask until I can kind of figure out, like, what are you really doing here? Like, but I'm going to say, okay, well, usually this is why I put these people here, or the rotation. I would explain, no, I just want these people here. And I would go to the point where I would ask very specific questions and probably catch that person into what they would do, generalized answers, until you kind of narrow it down as, okay, this person's really just playing favorites, right? I would definitely check on my team morale. If my team morale really starts to feel something about this and it starts coming my way, I would go talk to my supervisor one-on-one, tell him I kind of don't appreciate what's happening here, because, again, I'm in charge of the manpower here. I mean, it's given to me. This is how I would like to do it. So, I know you keep changing it on me. I'm not a big fan, but with that said, do you have a problem with what I do? No. Okay, then I'm asking you right now to kind of let me do what I got to do, because if you change it again, I'm going to write a report. And I know it's crazy, guys, but it's true. I'm trying to talk to you, but you're not listening. I'm going to write a report, because this is my job assignment. This is what I'm assigned to do. Right now, I'm having conflict with the front line about what's happening. So what I'm going to do is, every time you change it, I'm going to write a report and just says, hey, by the way, I had it this way and it was changed. Because having said that, if ever there's a chance where someone goes to challenge it because this lieutenant is playing favorites or whatnot, and they go to bring it another level up, now I'm documenting the fact that I'm not in on this game. Because again, most of the time the lieutenant can easily say, well, hey, Gangi does the manpower. No, you've been too late. It's too late at that moment. What I would do, I would document it and say, hey, guys, listen, keep on making the changes on me, lieutenants. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start documenting, and maybe even going to my union and saying, hey, this is how I want my manpower. I'm trying to keep it fair and balanced amongst the team to keep good morale. But the problem is my lieutenant's over my shoulder, second guessing every decision I make. And as a supervisor, I am entitled and within my rights to make certain decisions. And I don't need to be micromanaged, like Russ said. So my concern is, and the reason why I'm bringing it to the union's attention, I'm writing the report, is either tell me what I'm doing wrong and educate me to elevate me, or let me do my job. So I would document the pattern, and then just in case, two reasons, Russ, is one, let them know, making the effort to stop with this favoritism, but also to, in case anything goes anywhere, let them know I wasn't part of this. I'm going to pick my favorite to work today here. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think that in the spirit of this video, on one hand, we're addressing this toward people that need to solve this problem, people that are being, undercut, cut off at the knees, being circumvented in the chain of command, whatever way you want to put it. In another way, we're also addressing, though, those people that are doing this kind of thing that maybe are willing to change because they don't understand how pernicious and insidious this type of behavior can be when you're undercutting those people. So I hope that, if there's someone out there that's doing this and they suddenly realize, hey, wow, maybe the way I've been treating these people isn't quite right, but I'm just naturally that kind of person trying to do favors for people, take the load off and stuff. Maybe I should be, forcing or allowing is a better word, that sergeant to do their job in the manner that they see fit. Because you know what? They have a vision and a purpose and a drive too. It's not just yours. That's what teamwork is. Teamwork is meshing those visions and drives and energy together, not simply going it alone or just hoping that, hey, I've got some homies and I can try and, slot them into a position that has a piece of the weekend, or, I can assign them to something where they only have to do half the work and we can let someone else do most of the work. Those are a lot of things that really do, crash morale sooner rather than later. So if you fall into one of these categories where you're having this problem, take some of this advice. If you're one of those people that's causing all this angst and stress, take this advice.
Yeah, and guys, I mean, even as a supervisor, like what Russ said, the immediate supervisor, you're protecting the morale. And I know this is a problem that happens a lot. Especially people that are in supervisory positions that feel that, I'm going to take care of my boys when I move up, or, I'm going to use my power to hook up with the people I'm chasing after. I got to be, I want to be politically correct, so, the interest, the love interest, if you will, and trust and believe. Sometimes when you have these relationships at work, usually, you may get it where you have someone that, they have this relationship, so they could have an influence over the supervisor. That's why we expect when these relationships occur that you fill out the paperwork and state that you will not directly supervise the person that you're involved with as the supervisor. So having said that, the funny thing is that if you do, let's say this could be a relationship thing and the person's constantly moving the person that they're involved with, that person's already out of line in doing what they're doing. So God forbid you go back, you go back up and, you say, hey, listen, this is going to be an issue. And then you write, well, I don't know why I said God forbid, because this is the right thing to do. I said God forbid from the other perspective. But if you go to write it and make it be known that this person keeps on doing that, that person now has a direct influence over someone that they're not supposed to have an influence over. Because it happens. Like, so guys, if you're a supervisor and you're dating someone at work, you cannot be directly under their supervision, dating, married, or some type of influence in regards to that relationship. Even be business partners, a homeowner, and someone that's renting your house. Whatever the relationships that can have an influence over the other. So, for example, let's say I'm an officer and I own a house where the supervisor lives in. Sorry, guys, can't work together. He cannot supervise you, or she cannot supervise you. So what you do is, if there's another supervisor that person can be deferred to handle all the concerns, that's what happens. You write your report, you fill out the paperwork ethically, and the person can be deferred to someone else. You cannot directly supervise that person because of the influence between each other. With that said, doesn't mean you can still work the same shifts as long as you're able to defer the responsibility of supervising that individual to another supervisor. Now, when you get to the shifts that are not so heavily staffed, like an overnight shift, maybe a little harder, because you may only have one sergeant on the floor or one lieutenant on the floor. So with that said, now you may have to switch shifts. Now, the funny thing is, so if you're an officer dating a sergeant, there may be another sergeant. If you're an officer dating a lieutenant, or a sergeant dating a lieutenant, less lieutenants, maybe another one, may not. But once you start getting to the higher levels, you're talking about if this person could have influence and that's the person at the highest level. So let's do this. If you're an officer, sergeant, or whatever it is, whatever the lower rank is, and let's say you're dating the top dog, the warden, you can't work there. You guys cannot work together because that warden cannot defer that responsibility of authority over you to anybody else, because they're the last line in that chain of command. So there's no way they can forward it at all. But with that said, as you get lower, there's always that opportunity. But if you're not doing it and you're not reporting it, you will be held responsible if eventually that relationship comes to light. You have not reported it, and all of a sudden this sergeant comes in and is able to prove all the changes that were made on the schedules that they've done. So for anybody that's going through this issue, sometimes it usually deals with a relationship that they have with that individual, which could always be proven. But if it's a relationship that is really documented by, there is some influence, like there is a sexual component, there is a dating, they're married, they have business together, whatever it is, or they're guys, it could even be this way where they're buddy buddy. I mean, they're really tight and they're constantly hanging out together, doing these events. All you got to do is, if it's affecting you doing your job as a supervisor, as a sergeant, that could be part of the backup evidence that you need for that supervisor to stop circumventing your authority. Now, I want to say one thing, though. I'm not being an asshole with it. The only reason why I'm telling you to go this route is because now that supervisor's action that's above you is affecting the morale of the team. Now, I know, Russ, I just gave a lot there. What's your thoughts on what I gave? Would you agree?
I would agree with you, and I see the reasons for that. I will tell you that the systems that I've been in were a lot more lenient with regards to that kind of thing for whatever reason. Maybe there were fewer problems with it, or maybe just no one ever bothered to put that into writing. But I think that the main concern that we need to think about in these situations is, number one, what's right, and number two, how can it impact us down the road over things that we don't see with potential blips in the relationships and so forth. I think overall, the best thing to be said about this is be professional. When you're out there and you're supervising people, and those people are supervising people, operate within your function. If you are a lieutenant, operate qua lieutenant, and qua just means, within the capacity of, don't go outside the scope of what you're supposed to do. Stay within the scope of what you're supposed to do, and cause those people below you to stay within their scope, and operate it in a professional manner where you pay attention to things like the chain of command, where you pay attention to things like, staying in my lane, so to speak.
Now, I don't want people to hate me, because don't forget, guys, I mean, I get it. Can't expect all these things to be reported. I see a little hesitancy with Russ when I ask him, do you agree? But at that point, there's also the administrative side of me that has to tell you what the right thing is to do. I mean, to sit there and say all these relationships get documented, I'm sure it doesn't. But if it does start affecting the relationships at work and the morale of the team, it's really the person doing it that is putting it on blast, not the person that now has to step up and say, yo, you're messing with the morale. So with that said, I'm sure, we have supervisors that have these great rapports with their officers and they hang out all the time, and I get it. But you still have to come to work and be objective. You're playing a different role now. So when you're with your friends outside, I get it. You're Anthony, that's Russ, and we're hanging out. But when we come back to work, I'm Sergeant Gangi, this is Lieutenant Hamilton, and we have to respect that. And me as Sergeant Gangi or me as Officer Gangi, I'm not going to ask Russ for any privileges because he's my lieutenant. He has the power to do so. And Lieutenant Russ would probably tell me, hey, listen, we're cool, right? I get we fish, but the reason why we are cool is because you don't ask for anything, But, so I don't mind letting people know that we're connected, that we're good, because they can see that I'm treating you at work no different than anybody else. But trust and believe, once you start pushing into that favoritism, people are going to start talking about that closeness, and they're going to start talking about how there's influence. And then you got people that are documenting it somehow, and again, especially if it's so evident where you have a supervisor that their decisions are being questioned now because they're not in the favor of the person that the supervisor has that connection to. So with that said, if you feel that, you're in this you're a higher supervisor and you feel like you're in this relationship where the person could have influence on you, it's great to let them know, hey, if we're going to do this and we're going to date, or, whatever the case may be, I'm going to do this paperwork, and I'm just going to make it known that because we're involved, I don't want to directly supervise you. And then you can see how real the relationship is, if need be, it's like, hey, we're really in love, sign the prenup. You know what I mean? But guys, listen, Is it an asshole move? I have to tell you what's the correct thing to do. So people can argue it based on whatever it is. I get it. But when I ask you to look at this, you have to look at this from the role of your professional prescribed role and what's expected within that role in all acts of fairness. Not that's fucked up because me and Russ are boys, or that's the wrong way to be looking at it. That's not the perspective. The perspective is, hey, this is my prescribed role. I get what Gangi's saying. How do we keep things fair? So having said that, Gangi's not the bad guy for saying, hey, at this point, you got to be filling this stuff out because you're doing stuff you shouldn't be doing. You're showing favoritism. And right now, my team is dying. Their employee morale is gone because all they see is the favors that you're doing for your boy or your love interest. So I mean, Russ, I got a little hesitancy from you, but do you see from the management perspective that at this point, if it is the other person abusing it and taking advantage of their power because they're being influenced from below, and now it's starting to affect the morale of the team and the leadership right above it, at that point, I mean, if I was a supervisor that's being affected by that, and I see that there's this relationship here, and this person doesn't want to do the right thing, because again, I will come in and say, hey, listen, you obviously have this connection to this individual. You shouldn't really be directly involved in supervising because now you're affecting what I'm doing, because it's obviously through the pattern of behavior that you're, doing something for this individual, making it easier for them. I would suggest that you document this relationship before I do.
Well, let me just delve into it this way for you, right? In the systems that I was in, it wasn't that we didn't fill out the paperwork. It was that we didn't have any such paperwork to fill out. This was not an issue in what I was involved in. I honestly, up until this moment, have never heard of such a thing except in the United States military. So for me, that would be like something that, I couldn't ever quite address. What I do see though is that there is a need to make sure that we do keep, open lines of supervision clean from undue influences. However that's accomplished might be different from one system to another system.
Right. And I'm actually trying to get there is a specific title of the paperwork that you're supposed to fill out that separates. But basically the paperwork as a supervisor to a subordinate is separating your responsibilities to supervise them directly. And then giving it to another supervisor if that other supervisor is available. If that other supervisor is not available for it to be deferred to, then the concern is going to be as I said, the person either can't work on the same shift or the person is going to have to be moved to another facility if it's at the highest level. And again, I mean, I got to get the name of the paperwork, but Russ, you would definitely take note if you were constantly being second guessed, right? I mean, that's something you would do, right? You would document and then you would.
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the things that as a supervisor, you have to be able to push in both directions. You have to be able to push the officers or whoever you're supervising, to do the best that they can do. And if you're receiving some kind of untoward pushback from above you, you need to push back on that. Corrections is full of conflict, and sometimes we don't always get to pick where those conflicts occur. So you always have to, clear it up with that individual. One great thing about this video is going to be that if you're having this problem, there might be somebody that you can send it to, just an anonymous link, to say, hey, you know what, maybe you should take some advice from these guys who know about this kind of thing and how it can, erode morale and unit cohesion and esprit de corps and all of those things.
Yeah, I got it. It's paperwork that is meant to disclose the relationship. It should still be discreet, but basically the kind of policy seems to have become more common in the last few years, requiring employees to notify their manager of any relationships that start at work. The idea behind it in most cases is to make management aware of possible conflicts of interest. And again, usually this comes into play where there's could be disciplinary concerns. So we could have people that may have filled out the paperwork. And so let's say I'm a sergeant, and let's say I start dating an officer that's on the same shift. Technically, you should not be in any position to supervise them directly, technically. And that is the right thing to do. You fill out the paperwork, whatever it is. But the routine stuff, like maybe giving the person assignments, as long as everybody sees it's fair, there may not be an issue, even though you really shouldn't be supervising them at that point. Sometimes it may not be, there may not be an issue if you're not showing favoritism or not. But one thing you definitely cannot get involved in is any type of disciplinary with that person. Any type of disciplinary. You cannot be involved in anything related to disciplinary. That has to be deferred. Some places will allow you to manage the daily routine as long as it's done fairly. They may not question as long as the team, I get it. I still feel that you should always defer it because it only takes one person to have an issue. Regardless, the issue could be very subjective, but it only takes one person to have an issue. So at that point there, you may want to defer certain responsibilities of that person that you're involved with. But again, for this supervisor here in this scenario, whatever the reason is, if they could prove it that it's down to some level of personal information where the person on the lower level has influence on the person on the higher level, you don't want that person, the supervisor that you're messing with, to get to a point where they expose that. That's why I would honestly, as I said, I would document it and then eventually let the person know, like, I don't know what's going on here, but you're second guessing me. And it seems to be with your pattern of behavior, you're always second guessing me when it comes to this one individual. So eventually, if I start to bring it up, you're going to have a problem because you're going to have to justify through this pattern of behavior that I've been collecting. Now, mind you, I may not go after you the first time you do it. I may wait 5, 10 times. But once the pattern's been developed, I'm going to show a pattern. So it may not be something I immediately go to HR with or go to my supervisor with, the one above who I'm dealing with. I have to accumulate that. And I'm going to tell you another one too, real quick. Again, just a scenario I'm thinking of. You can have, I remember when you have like a higher level supervisor intimidating the lower level supervisor from writing disciplinaries for someone they have a relationship with. For example, you can have an officer that's coming in late, and the immediate supervisor does what they can because that's their job. They write the person up for coming in late. And then all of a sudden you get the supervisor of that supervisor intimidating you for writing it up. And then all of a sudden, of course, now they're telling you not to do your job. And I'll guarantee you 100%, if they can prove that there's a relationship there, and they know for a fact that the person intimidated you to not write a charge, that person's lucky if all they get is demoted. Would you agree with that, Russ?
Yes, but you know what? I don't know. In my mind, there doesn't even necessarily have to be that relationship there. Maybe for additional disciplinary on that person, yes. But just being friendly with people and cutting them a break and interfering with them, even if it's not a romantic interest or anything like that, just because you're friends with them or friendly toward them. You know what? Leave your subordinate alone to deal with that as they see fit. Don't interfere simply because you feel bad for that person or that you're friendly with that person. If there's a reason for you to interfere, make it justified. So say maybe, hey, you know what? We need to go with a more progressive disciplinary approach. This is too harsh, it being the first time or something like that. But don't let your internal feelings for different people, even if you're just friendly with them on the job site, cause you to silently undercut that individual that you're directly supervising. Remember, that's the person that you really have to be concerned about because they are truly within your sway of power.
This could have been a whole topic because it wind up talking into personal relationships.
Yep.
We should go live right now.
I just hope that I think we covered enough of it to give both sides, those that are doing the wrong thing and those that are receiving the wrong thing, some good solid avenues to pursue and to try and hash it out, talk it out, and then hopefully it doesn't end up being something that ends up with a bunch of paperwork. But that's beyond our control, obviously.
Yeah, but as I said, you don't want it to get to that point. But if it does start affecting the job, I mean, that's why, as I said, if I'm involved with somebody at work, I'm going to do the paperwork, because I don't want to supervise them, to be honest with you. Because even if I am objective and fair, the perception of it, when someone doesn't get what they want, you know where they're going to go to? They're going to go to that default, even though you haven't done anything wrong. It's like, well, why is this person here? It's like, it has nothing to do with anything, but they're always, you're going to become a target. You know, the moment you start dating someone at work, you're going to become the target for anything that someone thinks is unfair. It's tough. That's why I would do the paperwork, cover myself, and try not to directly supervise that individual. Just why have the headache? Hey, Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Nothing. I think it was a great topic. I hope everyone out there is able to take something away from it. I hope at the same time that anyone that is involved in this, if you're involved in undercutting, that you stop it. If you're the recipient of being undercut, I hope you find a way to to end that and to adapt and overcome and supervise your troops in the way that you see fit.
Love it, guys. And again, it's a good topic. I mean, it does relate exactly to why am I constantly being undermined as a supervisor, because at this point it could relate to that personal information, that personal relationship. So I thought it was a great topic. Hopefully it serves its purpose. As always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.